Welcome to Season 4 of Your Next Mission video podcast. We have a great show for you today that focuses on one of my favorite subjects, our military families. Besa Pinchotti from National Military Family Association will be with us to talk about the challenges our military families face and the programs they have to help meet those challenges. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss this one. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Your Next Mission video podcast, where we tell the stories of those who have served in the past and those who are serving today. From transition to financial wellness, VA benefits to mental health, we cover issues facing veterans, active military, and their families. Now here's your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army and co-founder of the American Freedom Foundation, Jack L. Tilley.
Hello out there, warriors, past and present, and your families, and thank you for your service to our great country. Now, before we get started, I personally want to thank our presenting sponsors, Navy Federal Credit Union, Purdue Global, and USAA for making Your Next Mission happen. They love our veterans and family. I'm going to say it every week. We love them too. As I said earlier, we have a great show today focused on our military families. And I'm excited to introduce Besa Pinchotti, Chief Executive Officer of the National Military Family Association. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I know the audience wants to hear everything that you have to say, but before we do that, would you tell the audience just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. I grew up in Texas, and I was in a family of a Kosovar immigrant. And so what I knew about the U.S. military was what I saw in my own home, which was that the U.S. military came in and saved my family during the war in Kosovo. So I had a deep appreciation, became a journalist, and I ended up in North Carolina at the beginning of the Iraq War. And that's when I really got to know some of the challenges that our military families were facing, whether it was the deployments or the casualties or all of the many challenges that our military families are going through on a daily basis. And it's also where, despite many a warning, I met and married a Marine and became a military member.
Go ahead.
No, that was my one warning. Whatever you do, don't marry a Marine. And of course, we don't listen. So got married, became a military family member myself. We went through the whole transition out of the military when my husband had spinal surgery.
Yeah.
And in the, years, because it was years that we took to find ourselves and find our way, I found my way here to the National Military Family Association, where there's just this wonderful community of support and people who know and understand what military families go through. And I'm just so proud to be here every day.
Well, God bless you. As you was talking, I was thinking, I deployed into Bosnia, I think it was 95 and 96, after they signed the Dayton Peace Agreement. I always tell people that unless you've been in a war-torn country, you never know what the kids, the children, the families go through and the sacrifices they make, because we're really just blessed living in this country because we absolutely have never had to deal with anything like that. So God bless you, and I guess it certainly turned out good for you, that's for sure. Even though, you have a few Army people out there, you could have, well, never mind. We'll talk about that later.
We love all branches, but
I know you do.
This one.
Okay, okay, never mind. I'm going to get off that before I get in trouble. The National Military Family Association has been around, I think it's been around since 1969, I believe. Would you tell us a little bit about the history?
Well, back in 1969, you know what was happening. It was the height of the Vietnam War, and we lost so many brave soldiers in Vietnam. And what happened was there was a group of military wives. They were sitting around their kitchen table, and they were talking about their friends whose service member was killed overseas and how their families were not being taken care of. They were just left high and dry to fend for themselves after that sacrifice that family had made for the country. And so these women, these military wives, put on their white gloves and they marched up to Capitol Hill and they went door to door and they told everyone they could, every congressperson, they knocked on every door and they said, this isn't right and we have to do something about it. And that was the start of the Survivor Benefit Plan. It was passed 2 years later, 3 short years later, about 2.5, which is very fast for legislation to be passed. And when we saw the power, when those wives saw the power of what we could do to support our own community, we took off and never looked back. And we've been doing this work ever since.
Yeah, I look back when you said about Vietnam. I remember I was in Vietnam, 67 or 68, but 58,220 people died in Vietnam. And I remember coming home about the fact that not many people really cared about that war because it was an unpopular war, and that was really a shame. But so just from this old soldier, thank you for all you guys are doing to help our families out, that's for sure. As you said, during those initial years, NMFA was mostly advocacy organization protecting the benefits of the military family. So, so deservedly earned, that's for sure. But when the war in Iraq began, didn't the mission change just a little bit?
Well, we saw that there were some huge immediate needs that we could not ignore. We had to do something about them immediately. As I mentioned, 2 or 3 years to pass legislation, that's short. It usually takes
Yeah.
7 years. So we knew that we had to do something quicker. And that is when we started our programming. And there are two key areas. One of them is Operation Purple, and that's camps for military kids and retreats for families. They happen all over the country. We are about to celebrate 20 years of Operation Purple programming that started then. And what it is a way for kids and families to get away from the stresses of military life and focus on things like communication, resiliency, and be around people who understand what they're going through. The other thing that we looked into at that point was financial difficulties that families were having. Military families move every 2 to 3 years, and that means it's really hard for military spouses to finish school and maintain a career to financially support their family. And the world right now is a 2-income family world. And so what we started then was a military spouse scholarship program. And it wasn't just so that spouses could get a degree, but they could get a license when they moved across state lines. They could get a certification. We've expanded that since then to provide entrepreneurial funding. And so when we see a need, we create a program, but then we used that programmatic data, the applications we were getting, the stories that families were telling us along the way. And we continue to use that when we go to Capitol Hill and when we talk to Congress and policymakers across the country about the changes that need to be made and the support that families need.
Yeah, it's nice that you say that, because I tell my wife all the time, I spent 36 years in the service. But she really was doing all the tough things. I mean, I was out, deployed and doing all that stuff. But the families are the backbone of the military. The families are the backbone of any family, that's for sure. And the scholarships, when you think about the fact that a spouse gets a job and she stays there for 3 years, she moves, and she got to start at the bottom again. For years they had to do that. So getting them an education, helping them with that stuff is so important. Let me ask you another question. Do you actually teach military families about benefits? Because I got to be honest with you about something. When I got out of the service, I didn't know much about my benefits because somebody was always my wife, and my wife wasn't there. Somebody else was teaching me. But do you teach people about benefits and entitlements?
We do a lot of work teaching military families about those benefits and entitlements, yes. And as you mentioned, it was your wife who was handling things at home. I bet you she was managing the checkbook, the finances, getting the kids in school, finding the house, setting everything up. That is all military spouses every step of the way. But then when you're in the military and you leave the military, what ends up happening is you're invited to a TAP program where you learn everything that you need to know when you go out into the world. And then what is the likelihood of you bringing that information home to your military spouse?
Zero.
Yeah, about zero, 0.1, something like that, something very low. And so we've done a lot of work to ensure that families are also educated about those. There's been a little bit of movement now. Military spouses can attend TAP if there's room, maybe if there's a spot, and if you can find childcare on last minute notice. So we do still have a lot of work to be done because, again, it's really the family members who are managing so much of it, and the service members just getting flooded with information to where you don't even know what to look at first.
Well, I think the problem is they sort of shove the information on you the last 6 months you're in the service. And that's, I'm trying to get out of the service. I'm trying to finish my education. And you're telling me what my benefits and entitlements are. So one of the recommendations I had, and I almost got it done, was put benefits and entitlements into the education system of our military education system, NCOS, and also financial education. So we teach them when they first come into the service to do that. And I got financial education into the program, but the war started in Iraq, and they took it out. I believe they put it back in. But things like that, we need to prepare them a lot quicker. The other thing I think is important is that the fact is we not everybody, but a lot of service members wait until the last 2 years, or they should be starting at the last 2 years to prepare to get out, but they don't. They wait till 6 months, 90 days, and then they go, wait a minute, I'll work it all out. Well, it's tough to work it out. Do you see that?
Absolutely. I think that it seems so far away. 2 years seems like a long time.
Yeah.
Retirement seems like a long time away. And then all of a sudden it's on you and you don't know where you even put those papers or that information or where to look first. So I do think that people wait way too long. And a lot of times aren't sure what to do at that point when you're
Yeah.
getting out of the military. They call it transition for a reason. It is a huge transition. It's almost like an identity crisis. You don't know where to live, where to move. It's the first time in a long time for a lot of families that you've even had that choice.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with completely different issues, trying to find out what your new career is going to be,
Yeah.
how you're going to live, where you're going to live. And it's huge. It's difficult. I remember when we went through it ourselves, and it's almost like I just need someone to hold my hand for those 2 years and tell me every step of the way. And we try to do that as much as we can, but there's just a lot to know.
It's a culture shock. I mean, it's really, you said it probably a lot better than I said, but you don't really fit in initially. You really got to be selective about where you want to live. See, I was sort of foolish. I thought, man, I'll live anywhere, because that's the way I've always done it. So I built a house, moved in the house, and then, when I got out, I started walking around and talking to people and all that stuff. Say, hey, I'm Jack Tilley. And I came back in the house. Here's my wife again, my spouse. She says, you got to stop that. I said, why? Because these people are going to think you're nuts.
You're freaking them out.
You're freaking them out. That's exactly what she said. But it was a shock for me, and it's for anybody that serves. I'm sure your spouse went through the same thing. It was you had to figure out where you fit in. The other thing I think is always interesting to me is if you haven't walked in my boots and you haven't seen the things I've seen, a lot of times it's just hard for you to relate. And I'm sure it's the same way with spouses. I mean, the spouses go through so much, they see so much, they hear so much, and it's just really tough. It's just hard for me. And I don't know, and I'm really glad what you guys are doing because there's no question you're making a difference. I don't know. I wish there was just more that we could do to help spouses out, really prepare to get out of their service, like the active. Almost they should be on active duty and pay them a little stipend while their husband's in the service or something. I don't know. Maybe nobody wants that because that's more money. But go ahead.
It's always such a balance with the money, right? Even when we go and we're talking to policymakers on Capitol Hill, and they're worried about things like recruitment. There's a real recruitment issue right now, and they're worried about things like retention. And, when you're spending money in the areas where families need it most, healthcare, childcare, housing, in these really key areas that are their promised benefits, that is how you keep military families comfortable. That is how you keep our military ready, because there is no way that a service member can go and do their job if they know that their family is back at home unable to get the health care they need, worried about putting food on the table. So it's really just convincing the right people to put that money in the right place where it will make that difference.
Yeah. It's sometimes I worry just a little bit. There's no long-term planning. It's short spurts of money. I'll be giving money for this, and then it's evaporated in a couple of years. They need to think 10, 20, 30 years out. And you're really right. When you talk about retaining people on active duty, if you don't take care of the family members, they're not going to stay. And if your spouse says, hey, I'm going to get out because of whatever, guess what? You're getting out. Because I don't care what anybody says. I've been married a long time. I know who's in charge of my family. It's not me. I wish it was, but sometimes I think I am, but deep down in my heart, I don't even know if I could take her. I think she's tougher than I am. Anyway, hey, hold that. This is a great discussion. I like talking about families because there's so much that we can do collectively to make a difference for our family members. We're going to take a quick break here. We're talking with Besa Pinchotti, Chief Executive Officer of the National Military Association. And you're watching Your Next Mission video podcast with me, your host, Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army. And don't forget, if you're enjoying the discussion, if you're not enjoying it, we're talking about military spouses now. If you're not enjoying it, something's wrong. Please like us. Click on that subscribe button below. Also, click on the bell next to the subscribe button to receive notifications of all of our upcoming video podcast releases. During this segment, I'd like to discuss some of the challenges military families face while they're on active duty and then after in the transition. Let's start with identifying some of the challenges while on active duty.
I'd say some of the key challenges on active duty are making your family work with the amount of money that you have to work with and with the stresses that you're going through. You know, one of the key stressors military families tell us that they go through is PCS. And in fact, those military moves are the number one reason that families tell us that they consider leaving the military, because they don't want to move their kids to another school. They don't want to find new doctors again. You mentioned a while ago about how spouses can be in a job for 3 years. That is a best case scenario, because what really happens is you move. Maybe you get in your house right away. Maybe you're in temporary housing. You're trying to get settled. You're trying to get your kids comfortable. You're finally set up, you find your doctors and all of that. Now you look for a job, then you start your job, and then all of a sudden it's time to move again, because that takes a while. All of those things take a while. You don't have your trusted family members, your friends, your community. You can't drop off your kid anywhere so that you can go and do a job interview until you find that safe place where you feel comfortable leaving them. So those transitions just weigh on a family. And they build up. There's the uncertainty, and then there's the buildup. And families are strong, they're resilient. Our military families, kids, spouses, they make us so proud and they make so many sacrifices, but there's only so much that they can take. And that's where we come in. And it's definitely mental health challenges, it's financial challenges, it's getting the health care that they need. And these are all things that we advocate for and have programmatic solutions for as well.
Yeah, one of the things I always people, it's hard sometimes for people to ask for help, and I guess it's the same way with a spouse. I mean, if you're a senior enlisted or a general officer, a colonel, whatever, but it's hard sometimes to reach out to help. The other thing I think is important too is when you're moving from one station to another station, from one installation to another installation, a mentor. You always got somebody that's a sponsor. I'm sorry, I said mentor, but a sponsor, somebody that helps you to when you're getting there. And I think the sponsors are really a key, especially when you're PCSing back and forth. Do you guys talk a lot with family members, with sponsors and stuff? And then the other question I was going to ask you, let's not forget about the kids and the things that they go through and the challenges and, moving, just what you said a little while, moving from one school to another school, and they may not have the same kind of classes that they had in the last school or the same kind of sports and stuff. So that's really tough. It's tough on the family.
Yeah, we don't have a specific sponsorship or mentorship program, but what we do have are some specialty groups, especially in some of the professions that are most common for military spouses: nursing, teaching, mental health. Those are some of the key ones. And what we see is a lot of military spouses sort of adopting other military spouses who are moving into their community. And we see a lot of recommendations. I'm leaving San Diego. You're coming to San Diego. You're a teacher. I'm a teacher. Let me see what I can do to work you into this position. So I see a lot of military families helping other military families, and that's truly beautiful to see. But as far as our military children go, they face a lot. And, it's the right thing to do to care about their mental well-being. But beyond that, these teenagers and young adults tell us that they plan to join the military. Year over year, more than a third of them have told us here at NMFA, we want to serve our country. So when we're not taking care of our military teens' mental health needs, when we're not taking care of their health needs, when they aren't feeling stable with all of the moves and all of the challenges and all of the stresses, we end up kicking that can and pushing the problem down the
Yeah,
road, because
absolutely.
whether they're our future military, whether they're a future military spouse, or maybe they're a leader in a community who cares for our military, they're bringing all of that with them.
Do you find a difference between, the officers enlisted, when you got the military spouses, then they much don't care, I don't think, do they? Or do they, is there a friction there or anything?
Well, no, there is no friction there. I would say the challenges are exacerbated in the younger families.
Yeah.
I mean, younger enlisted families, the financial issues that we see there are upsetting. And that's where we see through our Operation Purple applications, we have camps all over the country. And most of the applicants, especially in states like California, one of the most expensive states in the country, they say their annual household income is between 25 and 49,000. These are people with children living in California. It is so difficult to live on that. And they're telling us we're so thankful that our kid is away for a week at camp. We don't have to pay for childcare, and we don't have to pay for 3 meals a day for that child. We're talking about 1 week, and what a relief it is. We know that some of our younger enlisted families are truly struggling.
Yeah. Well, but they do give a cost of living allowance right down there. And for those places right there, I hope all of them get it when they're in California. If they high cost of living, they get adjustment something. It's probably not enough, but I know they try to give them something anyway.
It's not enough. And in fact, some years ago, they changed BAH to where it only covers 95% of the cost.
Yeah.
But we're finding that it is not covering 95% of the costs in a lot of areas. And one of our advocacy priorities is to get BAH, that basic allowance for housing, restored to 100%. The other issues that we see are there are safety nets. There is SNAP, there's WIC, there's a basic needs allowance. But the way that a lot of the calculations are done, they put basic allowance for housing in the equation, and that removes you from eligibility. So that's another thing we're advocating for, is fixing that math problem so that these families who need support are eligible to receive it.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to somebody else today, and 100% doesn't necessarily mean 100%. It may mean 70%. And that's really the way they look at it. If they ask for whatever the money is on a budget stuff, they know they're not getting that number, but they're going to get 70 or 75% or 80% of what they're asking for. And that's pathetic. I wish we'd give 100%, especially on housing like that. You want to say anything, Betsy? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, besides just the housing cost itself, PCSs are extremely expensive. You're having to put a deposit on a new house. You have to buy all your new cleaning supplies. You have to figure out if your car can make it across the country and pay for that. You're buying your kids what they need for their new school, their new sports team. So as we talk to families, so many of them tell us they're paying $5,000 plus out of pocket every PCS move. And that really adds up. And especially when you're doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah. One of the things I used to do is when I was PCSing somewhere, I would always go first. I'd fly out, go to my next duty station, find where we're going to live, get everything squared away. And then I'd bring my family after I'd situated everything. And it was a little less hectic for them. I thought it was anyway. But the only bad thing about that is my wife always had to ship all the household goods. I didn't do that. I only did that one time. That was when I got out for the last time there. So that was tough.
Yeah, that's something else. A lot of work does fall on the spouse, as we talked about, but there's another trend that we keep seeing. You mentioned that you would go and set up the household. Now there's something that a lot of families do called geo-batching. Families who don't want to move over and over and over again, so they choose to stay where they are with the kids while a service member does this PCS alone. They're paying for 2 households in a lot of cases, but that's how important it is for them to manage the number of transitions that their kids are going through.
Yeah. I was going to do that once myself. I was at a trip to Korea. I remember when I was somewhere, I think it's Fort Hood, and I was living at Fort Knox, and I told my wife, I said, geez, I don't want you to move, everything's situated, because I have a son on the it's an exceptional family member. And I said, I don't want to move him around. He's in a good school. Just leave him right there. But my assignment had to be for 3 years. And I said, I don't want to be separated from my family for 3 years. But luckily they changed my assignment. So those are hard. Those are hard problems, but hopefully there's people within that chain of command will help you work through those issues. And there was somebody that helped me that I certainly appreciate. During active duty, you're surrounded by a great support system. But once that transition, you're out, they struggle to only adjust to that new life identity. Let's talk about that a little bit. What kind of struggles that people fall in when they get out? How do they bridge that gap?
We talked a bit about just your family's identity crisis.
Yeah.
Right? We're also seeing a lot of employment issues, specifically for the service member. They're trying to figure out, what am I going to do for the rest of my life, right? And a lot of times they're trying multiple careers along the way. A lot of times that period in time is very stressful on mental well-being. And when a service member or a veteran is having a mental health issue, it is almost always the family member who is encouraging them to get the help they need. When you're active duty, that's a lot easier to do. You have TRICARE, they have TRICARE. You can call whoever you need to call. You have an inroad through DOD and your active duty lifestyle. As soon as a service member goes to veteran status, there is no line of communication for family members to get a veteran the support they need. Unless you're going to an intimate partner violence seminar or marriage counseling, there's no place for you to go as a military spouse to say, my veteran needs help. What can I do? How can I support them? And so that is something that we have been talking to the VA and DOD about. They're aware of that issue. I know that they want to do something and make a change in that direction. But with the emphasis right now on solving veteran suicide, we have to include families in that conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, my spouse probably knows more about me than anybody else in the world, and she knows if I'm depressed or whatever. Yeah, when you talk about suicide, I've had just in the last few years, I had a couple of friends that committed suicide, and there's so many stresses that's placed on an active duty person when they're in the service, and they don't. And you don't know it's there. You don't see it because they never say anything about it. They keep everything in, and all of a sudden something snaps. But I agree with you. There has to be a better way to connect with that veteran community. I brought that up not too long ago to the Chief of Staff of the Army. I said the same thing. I said we need to connect better with the veteran community because there's a lot of people out there that want to help you or want to help everybody, but we don't talk to them enough, and we need to do a better job. How is NMFA trying to get ahead of some of these issues with your programs about advocacy?
So with our advocacy, we're looking at those key issues and we're bringing them up. In fact, recently we were invited to the Quality of Life panel on the House Armed Services Committee. That is the panel tasked with looking at these quality of life issues, the key ones, and actually making change happen. So we make recommendations on how they can increase quality childcare opportunities for military families, how they can improve upon healthcare, mental health care for military families, what the issues are with housing, and explain to them what we're hearing in our community, whether it's through surveys or through our programs, and offer the creative solutions that military families need to thrive. And in a lot of cases, we see that the government, the services, they want to help. They come up with a solution and they push ahead with it. But the issue is it's all interconnected. So you really cannot solve one without solving the other. So we're doing a lot of work on figuring out the best, most interconnected way for us to support those families, whether it's with military service organizations like ours, whether it's through policy or whether it's through programming.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Who's on these panels that you sit on? Because one of the things that always used to bother me is they'd have senior people on there, but I always thought they ought to have some staff sergeants, some sergeant E5s, some military spouses, some junior enlisted that sort of get down to the weeds about what's really going on. Is anybody representing them on the board, I guess, on your panel?
So the Quality of Life panel has had a couple different discussions up to this point. The first one was with Department of Defense and probably many of those senior leaders that you're talking about. The second one was with these military service organizations. We were there with leaders from MFAN, Blue Star Families, and MOA. And we had the opportunity to bring to the table what we are hearing through our surveys, through our programs, and in our communities. And in a lot of cases are able to amplify a message because we're seeing a lot of the same things and we're focusing on different areas, but just bringing us all in the room to have that discussion. We're hoping to, again, get that integrated response
Yeah.
so that we can give families that support.
Yeah. I always thought what they should do is, from Congress or however they want to do it is send maybe 3-man or 4-person teams out to about 6 or 7 different installations around the world, all the services, and get input from the bottom down here a little bit, and then bring that information back. And I think that's the, not to say those organizations are not doing a good job, because they certainly are. They make a lot of changes, but I think we need to reach a step lower sometimes to just really see what's on the battlefield. And I'll give you an example. One time I had somebody call me and says, it was about, about a promotion system, about how come I wasn't sending all these guys to the promotion board. And I said, well, let me go back and check. And he sent me like 20 names. When I went back and checked, 9 of them had already been to the promotion board, and one of them was on a medical hold or something like that. So the information that flows upward sometimes doesn't get there. So let me tell you something. I absolutely love talking about military families, because what you do or what your organization does is so critical to the operation of, I'm not just, I always want to talk about the Army and the Marine, I want to talk about all of them, but for all services to make a difference, because this is an important issue to keep our military strong, making sure our military families are taken care of. We're going to take a quick break. You hold that thought. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to be right back. We got a lot more to talk about, so don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're watching Your Next Mission Video Podcast.
You're watching Your Next Mission Video Podcast, proudly presented by Navy Federal Credit Union, the most trusted credit union owned by members of the military community, serving all branches of the armed forces and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Purdue Global. You're ready for a comeback, and with Purdue Global, you can do more than take classes. You can take charge of your story, of your career, of your life. Earn a degree you can be proud of and get an education employers respect. Start your comeback at PurdueGlobal.edu. USAA.
A promise is a trust not to be broken, whether spoken with an oath or sealed with a pinky. And after 100 years, we're still taking care of the military community and their families. That's our mission, always.
Now back to your host, the 12th Sergeant Major of the Army, Jack L. Tilley.
Welcome back. We're blessed to be here today with Besa Pinchotti, Chief Executive Officer of the National Military Family Association. And I want all of our viewers to reach out to me directly. Tell us what topics you'd like to cover. I always tell you, this is not my show. This is our show. You can call or text me at 844-424-1134 or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org. Besa, we're heading to our final segment with you today, and I hope you've enjoyed it just as much as I have. I just have a couple more questions. Let's start with your partnership, especially the ones that help our military families better understand the benefits they deal with and challenges that military families make when they transition out of the military.
When you're talking about partnerships, we have so many fantastic partners. A couple of the key ones are Wounded Warrior Project, who support our Operation Purple programming. We couldn't do it without them. And Fisher House Foundation, who is a huge supporter of our military spouse scholarship program. All of our work comes from the generosity of donors, whether they're corporate, foundation, or individual. The need is great. I can tell you that from a scholarship perspective, we're able to give scholarships to 10% of our applicants.
Oh,
That's
wow.
90% who aren't getting them. And when it comes to our camps, we're able to serve 50% of campers who apply. So there's a huge need. And we have so many generous partners, but times are tough. Inflation is real. I know that we're all living it. So I will just say that we cannot do this work alone. And our tagline here at NMFA is "Together We're Stronger." And we see and we live that every day.
Yeah. What about social media? Do you guys do much on social media?
Yes, when it comes to military families and military teens, who is another program area, that's another program area for us. Social media is the world because that is how we keep in contact with one another through all of these moves. It's how we know how our friends are doing, when our friends are living in the same community as ours, when there's information to share. We have very active social media groups, one with Operation Purple Families. We have it with nurses, mentioned before, mental health workers. We have a lot of different groups for military family members. And when it comes to teens and especially mental health and mental well-being, Bloom is a program of NMFA that was created by and for military teens. And what happened was it was two teens, used to live in the same town, went through a very difficult PCS. They were both really struggling, and they started this community for military teens to communicate with each other. We use Facebook, we use Instagram, they use Discord servers and, TikTok, and it's where their world is. So at the same time as we're trying to manage mental health on social media, because it's a lot, we're trying to manage screen time. It's not healthy. We want kids outside. That's what our programs are about. We also have to deal with the reality that is the world. That is our world right now. So that is a huge resource for us and a great way to stay connected with military families.
I'm a social media person. I stay on social media all the time. No, I do. I probably, I think I have on LinkedIn almost 12,000 followers, and Facebook about, 4,000 or 5,000. But you're really right. That's the way to stay connected. And really, what you was talking about, getting the pulse of people and, see what's going on. Just read some of the comments and stuff. Because people, they'll say what they want to say, which is really good. Hey, what are the 2 or 3 things that, really as a society that we can do to help our military families? The challenges of transition. Is there 2 or 3 things that you like to think is really important?
One thing I think is really important is the same way that you went out and your wife told you to calm down, you were going to freak people out, say hello to people.
That's true.
I think that others need to say hello to our military families, especially if you are a veteran, especially if you know what it's like yourself. It's making that introduction and going beyond just hello and bringing them some brownies, but really talking to them about what they're going through, offering to support in all of the different ways. I can tell you, my kids come home on the first day of school and tell me every year who the military kids are in their class because they are well trained. They know I've told them to do that, but that's really important because military families need to be seen. We can't support them if we don't know who they are or where they are. The other thing I'll say is talk to your legislators. If you hear something today that's compelling, if you hear something from the military families in your neighborhood, you don't have to go there with policy solutions. And what they want to know is what is going on in their communities. And if you have military families in your community, those are their constituents. This is their community too. And hearing from you is extremely valuable. And then the last thing I'll say, 1, 2, 3, you said 3 things. The last thing I'll say is that there are a lot of wonderful military family support organizations. I know that you've had a lot of them on your podcast here, including TAPS, including us. I would say find an organization that resonates with your values and support them, whether that is financially through your volunteer hours. We definitely need the support and can't do this work alone.
Well, I said 3, but you can throw 4, 5, and 6 in there if you want to throw them in there.
I can keep on going. There are so many things.
There's always a lot of things.
Give me a call.
Hey, do you have a website or a phone number somebody can, if they want to call you or reach out to you for some reason?
We do. It is militaryfamily.org, and that's singular, militaryfamily.org, because we are all one big military family.
Yep, there you go. Oh, I appreciate it. Anything, first of all, let me tell you that I appreciate all that you do for our military families and our active duty service members. All services. I'm going to make sure I throw that in real quick. I want to make sure your husband don't get mad if I just talk about the Army here. But thank you for what you do. Your organization, you're making a difference, making a difference. So the people that are listening to this show, if you can find in your heart to donate a couple of dollars or something to help them out, because we need to make sure we help our military families out, because they need help sometimes. So don't sit back and do nothing. That's for sure. You can think about something, but don't think, do it. Do something that helps them. Any final thoughts? Anything that you want to share with the audience? Anything maybe we missed? I tried to work real hard to pronounce your name correctly, but maybe I messed it up.
You did it. You covered it
No,
really
well.
well.
They rehearsed me a few times, so I got.
I'll tell you, my husband, as I've mentioned a few times, a Marine, and I was asking him before I did a presentation last week, what kind of advice you got for me? And he said, well, I'll tell you what they told us in the Marine Corps. Do the right thing, have fun, and don't talk to any generals. That I don't think I can follow the third one, but I'll definitely go.
Well, I'll give you 3 more. Usually they told me, it says, be good, be short, be gone, or something like that.
There you go.
Hey, thanks again. I appreciate all you do. We appreciate being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
God bless. There you go. Thanks to Besa Pinchotti for being with us today. I'm Jack L. Tilley, 12th Sergeant Major of the Army. You've been watching Your Next Mission video podcast, and thank you for watching today. Please visit our website at yournextmission.org and leave me a review. I always say I hope it's a good review, but if it's a bad one, that just makes it better for all of us. You can also visit our nonprofit and corporate partners there, which provide you with jobs and services that are available for you to assist you in your transition from the military. Please know we want to assist you any way we can. You can follow me on all my personal social media pages. Never thought I'd ever say that. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Rumble. And if you enjoyed this discussion with Besa, please like us. Click on that subscribe button below. Also, don't forget, click on the bell next to the subscribe button to receive all the notifications of our upcoming video podcast. We want to hear from you. Please leave me a message or send me a text at 844-424-1134 or send me an email at smatilley@yournextmission.org. Thanks again to Besa Pinchotti for joining us today. It was just great having her on the show. And when you talk about military spouses and you talk about the sacrifices they make, and really all of them, active duty, military spouses, the things they do for our country, most people have no earthly idea. They come back with post-traumatic stress, with wounds and scars that most of us could never see. But do something for them. Do anything you can to help our military spouses and family. Go to the website at NMFA and donate something because they do need your assistance. They're making a big difference for all of us each and every day. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks to New Mind Studios and, of course, our presenting sponsors, Navy Federal Credit Union, Purdue Global, and USAA. We appreciate all you do for our military. And as always, see you on the high ground. Hooah!
You've been listening to Your Next Mission, brought to you by the American Freedom Foundation. Learn more by visiting yournextmission.org.